So this is the Samsung Galaxy A57, and I've had this phone for about a week, and I want to share with you my honest review as a real user, real buyer of this phone. And we'll begin by talking about the thermal reality of this device, or aka how cool does the phone stay to the touch. The first thing I thought immediately when I seen this phone was, this thing is rather thin here. How will those thermals actually feel? And the honest truth of this one is that when this phone starts getting pushed hard, this mid-ranger, especially in a game or something like that, it can be a little bit warm. However, there is one pro. This phone does have the bypass charging. So when you plug it in while playing a game, for example, it'll pause the charging and then the device will stay pretty cool to the touch. Also, I found that in regular usage, like if I'm just opening applications, reading articles, text messaging, doing anything split screen, any basic tasks like that, where I'm just using the phone normally, I don't really have any issues with thermals. It stays pretty cool. And I think the truth is that this phone right here doesn't really have like such a powerful processor to go ahead and really push it to like a lot of heat. So really what I find is that I think it's getting pushed beyond its limits with certain games, which causes it to heat up a little bit. So that's something. Also, I noticed when this phone does get a little bit warmer to the touch, it tends to get a little bit choppier. Unlike I see on flagships, on some flagship phones, even as they get hot, they still tend to stay performing well. This one, when it starts to warm up, it starts to lose its edge, starts to feel a little bit laggier, and you're kind of reminded why you have bought a mid-range phone, or what you get with a mid-range phone, especially this one right here. So when typing on this phone, it feels a little bit hollow, a little bit buzzy. It's so thin, honestly, I can feel like the vibration going to the back glass, especially if I'm using this kind of without a case. But generally, I found the typing experience to be pretty good on the Galaxy A57, although its haptics are not super strong, so don't expect that on a phone of this price tag. It's just not there. The bezel symmetry as well is something I was getting asked about. Does this phone have a chin? I've seen comments about that. And the truth is it has a tiny one. It's not that noticeable. If we look here and then we bring the phone down here, you'll see that bezel is definitely not the same size. So that does trigger my OCD just a little bit, but the bezels on the side look beautiful. So I do like the bezels on the side. It's just, it still has a minor chin. It's not a big deal. When you slap a case on this phone, it definitely kind of hides it a little bit, but not always. So you can still see it somewhat. Honestly, the bezel's not a huge deal, but if you have OCD and you like perfectly symmetrical bezels, you might not like this one. Just a little small point I wanted to point out, a little detail you don't hear a lot of people talking about. Another detail is I do like the display's Super AMOLED Plus panel. It is very vibrant, very saturated, but it does have that same issue that some other Samsung phones have, and that's a very low 240 hertz PWM. So it does have pretty deep modulation, and essentially this phone, it does have low enough PWM that it will actually potentially irritate your eyes at night, cause some eye fatigue, potentially headaches, if you have a sensitivity to this type of thing. So do try it out for yourself in store to see how it works. And if you get this phone, play with it at nighttime for a little extended session, see how you feel after. Generally, if you want a more accurate panel, this one is pretty vibrant, but if you go over here to settings and scroll to display and then go to the screen modes, once I go in natural, it does look a lot less vibrant, but still more vibrant than some non-OLED. So I do think the display is absolutely gorgeous, has really good colors and stuff of that sort. And no matter what you're doing, the reds pop, the colors just pop. It just looks good. So kind of reminds me a lot of those older Samsung panels where when you watch a video or whatever, everything was just very vibrant and super colorful, versus some of their flagship dynamic AMOLED panels that are a little bit more, how would you say, a little bit more natural looking. They definitely are going more towards accuracy on the S line, but this one kind of retains pretty sharp text and a very vibrant experience. Also, on a 6.7-inch screen, I think it's a good size where it's big, but it's not like massive big, like 6.9. So it could still be a pretty comfortable spot, but it's not a small phone by no means. You still will be reaching up for things on this phone for sure, and you still got to move your hand around. Like you still might want to use the one-handed Samsung mode on this phone for sure. So it is a pretty sizable screen, if I'm being honest. Due to this being a mid-ranger, there is a substantial amount of glare on this phone right here. You can see from different angles. In this indoor lighting, it's not like super apparent, but if you look at this versus, say, a Galaxy S26 Ultra, you're going to see much more anti-reflective properties right there. Of course, we're not comparing a top-tier phone in terms of technology. You're not going to get the same quality, but when you're outdoors, this phone hits about 1900 nits peak, which just means in regular people terms it's bright enough, but it's not like super bright like those higher nit brightness displays you'll find on some other phones. So in sunlight, this is acceptable, but it does glare a bit, so just keep that in mind. Also, this fingerprint scanner, in my experience, is a little bit hit or miss sometimes. I think it's just its positioning. I found that when I place my thumb on the display, if I'm not hitting that right lower spot, it just feels a little unnatural because I got to bring it down. I think the placement up here where like the Ultra is feels a little bit more natural in my day-to-day usage, but here you kind of got to get used to that adjustment. But once you do, it's fine. I think it would be better to just have them on the fingerprint scanner over here on the power button, but that's just what it is. Also, I feel like the edges on this phone are a little bit sharp. You could definitely feel them. I don't mean sharp like cut your hand sharp. I mean they just feel like they don't feel smooth. Like nowhere really on this phone, it doesn't really feel smooth on the edges, like flat, sharp edges. Not pointy like a Samsung phone, but not smooth like an iPhone Pro, iPhone 17 Pro or something like that. You'll definitely feel these edges, but you could quickly smooth it out with a case, and I'll leave a link to this case down below. Not sponsored, it's just the one I'm using right now. Just a nice forest green case to go on this phone. The caseless ergonomics are definitely pretty solid though, because the phone itself is very light. So I noticed over my time using it that the weight doesn't really get to you too much. It just feels incredibly light overall. So the battery life on this phone has actually been very strong with its 5,000 milliamp hour cell and 45 watts of charging. The phone gets through a day with ease, even heavier use day. Also, it can extend into the next day for I think a lot of people's daily use. So this is an incredible battery phone. If you throw it on the maximum charging protection over here, you might not be able to charge it at full. But definitely you can throw on sleep time protection if you don't want it topping up every time, kind of extending your overall longevity of this phone's usage. But generally I find that this battery is just a really great performer for those of you who are using the phone casually and even a little bit more heavily and even using some GPS. It seems that though you get a little bit better than even some flagship phones, probably because the CPU isn't as power hungry as the more intensive ones, and the GPU isn't as strong either. So it just feels like it's not pushing the phone as hard, which therefore gives me better battery life. So I do like mid-range battery life phones. I think they do better in this department. So this is no exception right here. Another thing is that having the IP68 rating gives us dust and water resistance like no A series before. So it feels a little bit more like I could trust this phone out and about. I do like that overall. And getting on to one of the last sections I want to talk about in this review, and that is the camera. I'm going to go ahead and show you some samples in a minute, but a couple of things I just don't like about this phone's camera is, one, why don't we have UHD 60? $600 and we don't have UHD 60? Are you kidding me, Samsung? That's ridiculous. Over here on the front, let's take a look at this UHD 30 on the front. We can get used iPhones from a couple like 3 years ago that have UHD 60 on the front and the rear. There's also phones in this price tag that have that easily. So this is a big miss on their part, giving you way less video expansion. Then you're going to have to go to get a higher tier phone to get better video quality. So that's a huge miss on this phone. Also, 10 times zoom is archaic in zooming. I think you could still get better zoom at this price. So they need more zoom on this phone. The modes are there. They're plentiful. I think there's enough for most people, but it's not like a Galaxy S level of modes. Wasn't expecting that, but I think they can step it up in the value and the camera department. One of the saving graces of this phone, though, is the actual shots of the photos. I think for most people, they don't really have to focus too hard. This pretty much nails most of the shots, and most of the shots look pretty sharp. And so a couple other things I wanted to mention before we get up out of here is the performance. In my speed test, I was pretty disappointed with this phone's lack of ability to open something like Destiny Rising, in which therefore it crashed. So this phone's performance definitely can show some weakness, especially when you push the phone beyond, I'm not going to say basic use, but beyond performance where like you need a game that requires a little bit more graphical prowess. This phone right here tends to choke up a little bit. So that's the con with this one. You get the Galaxy S25 FE if that's for you. No expandable memory on here either is a hit for this phone as well, because some of the older A series had that. So in conclusion, this phone gets a 7 out of 10 for me, with recommendations for non-power users. Of course, for casual users, but I think a lot of power users or anybody who's a flagship before will enjoy the general performance of this, but then when they start pushing the phone a little bit, they're going to be like, dang, I should have went with a flagship phone. So for me, I'm probably not going to keep it long term. The previous A series were cheaper, so it felt like a better value, but this year with the heightened price of this phone, like raising the price, it does feel like a yesteryear flagship or even the Galaxy S25e, whether refurbished or used, would be a better option overall. So I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. It's solid. It looks nice. It feels nice. But where it's really falling short, I think, is the Exynos under the hood and having 8 gigabytes of RAM. I think it needs more RAM and a faster CPU to really get more competitive in this space. But where it still shines is One UI 8 with its long-term software updates. The overall feel of the software still feels very nice. It's Samsung. After all, it's pretty polished. And it has good enough performance for, I think, a lot of users. But it's just not super impressive. I just think there's better and faster phones at this price. So let me know if you agree or disagree with my comments, my statements down below. If you have an A57, share your experience. And this is just my take. Some of your guys' opinions might be, look, bro, I got the phone, it's fine. And I want to hear what you got to say for those of you who own it as well. I'll catch you on the next episode. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.